Do you pour your heart and soul into growing tomatoes, treating them like your precious babies, only to end up with plants full of blossoms but no actual fruit? Or worse, tomatoes that are just plain sour? More than likely, you're making one of 7 common mistakes that are silently but effectively sabotaging your tomato harvest. In this video, we'll break down each of these 7 mistakes, keeping it concise, practical, and full of helpful examples. And more importantly, we'll show you how to avoid these mistakes and finally get those sweet, juicy tomatoes that taste like sunshine. Tomatoes aren't actually that fussy, but they do need the right approach. It's not just a plant it and forget it situation. It takes a little bit of knowledge and observation, and that's often where things go wrong. Too often we rely on old tried and true methods, or just grandma's advice, without really checking what works and what's best left in the past. That's exactly why today we're going to uncover the most common mistakes, backing everything up with facts, keeping panic levels at 0, and maybe even sharing a little relatable self-deprecating humour along the way. Erratic watering, a recipe for tomato trouble. At first glance, tomatoes might seem like laid-back plants. Just water them whenever you remember, and they'll be fine, right? Wrong. Inconsistent watering is actually one of the quickest ways to ruin your harvest. If you soak your plants after a dry spell, the fruits will start to crack. On the flip side, if you forget to water, the blossoms and young fruits will drop off, the leaves will wilt, and you'll lose your entire crop. Another common mistake, watering the leaves, especially in the evening. This is practically an open invitation for late blight. So, what's the right way? Always water directly at the base of the plant. Don't drown them, but be consistent. The best time is the morning. The soil is cool and the water has time to soak in before the sun makes it evaporate. Consistency is key. You don't want bone-dry soil, and you don't want a swamp. Just aim for steady, even moisture. Avoid drastic swings and definitely no impulse watering like, maybe I'll give it extra today. Tomatoes really thrive on routine. Water isn't just moisture for them. It's a crucial part of how they get their nutrients. So ditch the watering by feel approach. Stick to a schedule instead. Soil is the foundation of a great harvest. Get the soil wrong and your tomatoes won't taste right. You can water them, feed them, fuss over them. But if the soil is poor, at best, your tomatoes will be watery, and at worst, they just won't ripen. Heavy clay, compacted soil lacking air. This is stress for the roots. They can't breathe, they can't absorb nutrients, and the plant struggles. What about soil that's too light and sandy? All the moisture drains away, fertilizers wash out, and you're essentially feeding the groundwater, not your tomatoes. So, what's the solution? First, you need balance. The soil should be loose and well draining, but not depleted. Add organic matter, like compost, or well-rotted manure. This provides nutrients and improves structure. And don't forget about drainage, especially if you're planting in a low-lying area. Feeding your plants is also important, but not just any fertilizer will do. Nitrogen is key at the start for leafy growth. After that, focus on phosphorus and potassium to encourage flowering and fruiting. One more important point, acidic soil is a silent killer for tomatoes. Check your soil's pH if your plants aren't thriving, and if it's too acidic, you'll need to adjust it. Remember, better soil means fewer problems with your plants. Think of your soil like your kitchen. If it's poor and neglected, you won't produce a delicious harvest. Overcrowded planting. Your tomatoes need room to breathe. You might think planting more plants means harvesting more, but with tomatoes, that's just not true. Plant them too close together, and air can't circulate between them. Where it's stuffy and damp, late blight quickly appears. Plus, the plants stop fighting for light, water, and nutrients. What's the result? Leggy stems, weak fruit, and more diseases. What should you remember? Give each plant space, at least 50 to 70 centimetres between them, and ideally up to a metre. This isn't wasted space. It's giving your tomatoes the chance to really thrive. Sunlight needs to hit the leaves, and air needs to flow freely around and through the plants. This is extra critical if you're growing in a greenhouse. They're already prone to being humid and hot. If you pack your plants in too tightly there, diseases can take hold even before you see your first fruit setting. Think of it this way. Tomatoes don't like crowds. They need their personal space. So the smart approach is to plant fewer plants, but plant them correctly. You'll end up with a bigger, healthier harvest. Feeling bad about pinching off those tomato suckers? Don't! They're stealing your harvest. Lots of new gardeners hesitate to remove them. It's just another little branch, they think. That means more tomatoes, right? But actually, it's the opposite. Suckers are those side shoots that sprout from the spot where a leaf meets the main stem. They suck up water, nutrients and energy, but produce little to no fruit. Or the fruit they do set is tiny and shows up late. If you leave them be, your plant turns into a dense, overgrown mess. No light gets in, no air circulates, and diseases love it. Plus, the fruit that could have gotten big and ripe just stops growing. So, what should you do? Pinch those suckers off regularly. Morning is best, especially when it's dry. Don't wait until they're huge. The smaller they are, the easier they are to remove, and the less stress it is on the plant. But here's a key point. Not all tomatoes need the same kind of suckering. Indeterminate varieties, the tall, vining types, need consistent and strict pruning. Determinate varieties, especially the bush types, need much less attention. They naturally stop growing at a certain height. The most important thing? Don't just let your plants go wild. Those extra shoots aren't making your plant stronger, they're weakening it. If you want big, juicy tomatoes, get rid of the competition. Too much fertilizer? You'll get a jungle instead of a harvest. You might think more fertilizer is always better, but that's definitely not the case with tomatoes, especially if you're giving them too much nitrogen. Nitrogen is all about green, leafy growth. Overdo it, and you'll get stunning foliage, huge leaves, and thick stems. The problem? Very little fruit, or maybe just a handful. A plant overloaded with nitrogen starts focusing only on growing leaves and stems. It's in no hurry to produce fruit because it's perfectly happy just growing green. You'll keep waiting and waiting, only to end up with a massive, unproductive bush. So, what's the right approach? Nitrogen is crucial only in the early stages when seedlings are establishing and growing. After that, you need to switch to phosphorus and potassium. These nutrients are essential for flowering and fruit development. They directly impact both the flavour and the yield of your tomatoes. Another common mistake? Fertilising randomly or every couple of days. Eyeballing it and feeding too often actually hinders the plant. It's much better to follow a schedule, feed in stages, and use the correct dosage. Tomatoes appreciate nutrients, but they absolutely hate being overfed. So don't turn your garden bed into an all-you-can-eat buffet for them. Think of it more like a carefully planned, balanced diet. Pests aren't just a minor nuisance. They're a threat to your entire harvest. Many gardeners spot aphids or whiteflies and think, oh, it's just a few bugs. They'll go away on their own. But they don't. And if anything passes, it's your harvest. Aphids suck the life out of young shoots, stunting growth and deforming leaves. Whiteflies are tiny but trouble. They leave behind sticky residue and spread viruses. And caterpillars? Those can devour half a plant overnight. The problem is, pests multiply fast. If you don't act right away, a week later it's often too late to fight. All you can do is try to salvage what's left. So, what should you do? Inspect your plants regularly. Pay special attention to the undersides of leaves, especially the lower ones. See the signs? Act. Don't wait until you have time. Act now. There are biological controls, homemade remedies, traps, plenty of options. The key is not to delay. Another piece of advice: don't forget prevention. Ventilate your greenhouse, avoid overcrowding plants, rotate crops, and don't be afraid to remove infected leaves. It's better to sacrifice one leaf than the whole plant later. Your plants don't scream when they're suffering. But pests move fast, so keep a close eye on your garden beds. That's your harvest, and there are plenty of others who want a piece of it besides you. Bad garden neighbours are often the silent culprits behind a poor harvest. You might be doing everything right, watering, feeding, pest control, but if you've got the wrong plants growing next to your tomatoes, your harvest will inevitably suffer. Some plants are simply incompatible. They compete for the same nutrients in the soil, attract similar pests, or create an unfavourable microclimate. Take cucumbers, for instance. They love moisture and shade, while tomatoes crave sun and good air circulation. Plant them side by side, and one of them is bound to struggle. Potatoes are another problematic neighbour. They share the same susceptibility to late blight and other diseases. And what about strawberries? While lovely, they attract insects that will happily move on to your tomatoes. But here's who tomatoes do like: basil, calendula, and garlic. They help deter pests and don't compete for nutrients. A classic tip is to plant onions or marigolds around the edges of the tomato bed. It's not only beneficial, but also adds beauty. So, don't just plant things wherever they fit. Your garden bed isn't a free-for-all. Tomatoes need the right neighbours, not just random companions. Choose your plant allies wisely, and you'll get more yield with less struggle. What if you're doing everything right, but your tomato harvest is still a letdown? And the surprising reason? It might just be the variety itself. Some varieties just aren't suited for your specific region, climate, or even your greenhouse setup. Others, however, require special care. For example, determinate varieties don't need to be suckered as aggressively as indeterminate types. Understanding the right variety for your conditions can literally double your harvest without any extra effort. And that's the key. The simple takeaway is, tomatoes thrive with attention, but don't overdo it. Stick to these simple tips and your plants will reward you with juicy, flavourful fruit all summer long. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on future tips. And in the comments, tell us, what gardening mistake have you learned from? Or maybe you have a clever trick of your own. Share them below.